We begin the news at this hour in West Africa, where the military regimes in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have announced their immediate withdrawal from the West African bloc, ECOWAS. The leaders of the three Sahel nations issued a statement saying it was a sovereign decision to leave the economic community of West African states without delay. Struggling with terrorism, the regimes have had intense ties with ECOWAS since coup took place in Niger last July, Burkina Faso in 2022, and in Mali in 2020. Now, all three were suspended from ECOWAS, with Niger and Mali facing heavy sanctions. They have hardened their positions in recent months and joined forces in an alliance of Sahel states.
Leurs Excellences le capitaine Ibrahim Traoré, le colonel Assimi Goïta et le général de brigade Abdourahmane Tchani, respectivement chef d'État du Burkina Faso, de la République du Mali et de la République du Niger, prenant toutes leurs responsabilités devant l'histoire et répondant aux attentes, préoccupations et aspirations de leur population, décident en toute souveraineté du retrait sans délai du Burkina Faso, du Mali et du Niger de la communauté économique des États de l'Afrique de l'Ouest, fait à Ouagadougou, à Bamako et à Niamey le 28 janvier 2024. Merci de votre aide.
Meanwhile, the West African bloc, ECOWAS, says it is ready for a negotiated solution after Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger said they were quitting the group. ECOWAS said the three countries are important members of the community and the bloc remains committed to finding a negotiated solution to the political impasse. ECOWAS said they were yet to receive any direct formal notification from the countries about their withdrawal. Earlier, policy analyst at Development Reimagined, Ovigwe Egugu, joined us on the news and gave an expert view.
Sovereign decision. They're not instructed by anybody to be in ECOWAS. They don't have to be in ECOWAS, actually. You know, countries come together to decide to be in a supranational organization. So if they don't want to be part of it, they can decide to leave at any time. That's their choice. Now the question there is, why are they doing this now? Because even pressure from ECOWAS has really reduced. If we are looking at, if we compare this to just immediately after the coup in Niger last year. So that's a more important question that I think might even be upsetting so many people in ECOWAS, because they just can't really figure out why this group of countries are making this decision. Already we know they've launched the Alliance of Sahelian States, which shows much more deeper collaboration and cooperation between them. They've signed several treaties in that regard. So I think it's a bit, bit strange that they're doing this now.
In a related development, hundreds of people have taken to the streets of Niamey to celebrate the announcement made by the military regimes in Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger on their immediate withdrawal from the West African bloc, ECOWAS. The Prime Minister, appointed by Niger's regime on Thursday, blasted ECOWAS for bad faith after the bloc largely shunned a planned meeting in Niamey. ECOWAS blamed an aircraft technical fault in Abuja for the cancellation of its mission to Niger.
Parce que c'est une demande des peuples des États du Sahel pour sanctionner la CEDEAO qui à l'origine était partie pour être une CEDEAO des peuples, mais qui s'est avérée être un instrument au service de l'impérialisme français.
Nous sommes libérés de cette CEDEAO-là. Au diable leurs sanctions. Et on considère que dorénavant, il y aura des accords bilatéraux avec les autres États. Donc c'est fini avec cette structure satanique qui veut étouffer le peuple nigérien ou bien le peuple du Sahel.
Over 380 persons were kidnapped between December 1st, 2023 and January 3rd, 2024 across Nigeria under President Bola Tinubu. According to data obtained from the ICIR from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, a data bureau collecting data on the locations, date, actors, fatalities, and types of all reported political violence and protest events worldwide, those abducted include men, women, farmers, children, and students. The victims were taken hostage at various events that happened during the last month of 2023 and the first week of the new year, illustrating the escalating number of kidnap cases in the country. Affected states include Anambra, Benue, Cross River, Delta, Enugu, FCT, Kaduna, Katsina, Kogi, Lagos, Nasarawa, Ogun, Rivers, Sokoto, Taraba, and Zamfara. And to talk about this, I'm being joined live in the studio by a public affairs analyst, Bola Wole. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to have you join me.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, in one of your articles, you talked about kidnappers no longer being on a prowl, but on a rampage. Could you expatiate?
Yeah, what I mean is that it is no longer a once-in-a-while situation that we have now. We have an occasion, you have a situation now where kidnapping has become the order of the day. Hardly a day is passed before you hear cases of this person has been kidnapped, that person has been kidnapped. So it has become a recurring decimal. So it's not something that happens once in a while. It's something that has become part of our culture, part of our daily living. When you leave your home now and you are traveling, you are not sure you will get to where you are going, or if by chance you get there, you are not sure you will not be kidnapped there. If you escape being kidnapped there, you are not sure you will return to your home safe and sound. So it has become an epidemic, and that is why we say that they are not just on the prowl. On the prowl, you steadily, you secretly leap upon your victim. But now they do it openly. They do it in the daytime. They walk into people's homes. They go into even security fortresses, and the impunity, the confidence that they have, the audacity that they have is why I say that they are now not only on a prowl, they are on a rampage.
I haven't stated that. What factors would you say are responsible for the increase in kidnapping in Nigeria?
Yeah, many factors are responsible. We have the factor of corruption. There is corruption, and that corruption is not allowing the security forces to act the way they ought to have acted, for them to do what they ought to have done. And find the situation, we have evidence, we have examples of security forces themselves being part of the kidnappers. Many of the kidnap cases that we have had, we have found that soldiers have been involved. We find that policemen have been involved. Security forces have been involved. We find that government officials have been involved. And you also find that individuals have arranged, have stage managed their own kidnapping so that they can collect ransom from their parents, from friends, and from things like that. So corruption is one of the problems that has led to this matter being exacerbated and is getting out of control. Another problem is that you have the poverty. There is poverty in the land, and a lot of people are trying to do whatever they can do to survive. So you find that many of the cases of the kidnapping that we have today is for economic reasons. People are kidnapping, they are asking for 500,000 naira. People are kidnapping school kids. People are kidnapping their friends. People are kidnapping family people. People are staging their own kidnapping so that families can raise money and things like that. So you have that poverty is also one of the reasons why we have this case of corruption becoming an epidemic. And of course, you have politics. The other reason is politics. Some people are doing these things so as to give the government a bad name. Some people are doing this thing as a way of fighting the government, as a way of, it's like some people are doing this as a way of overthrowing, in quote, the government and giving the government a bad name and making sure that the country becomes ungovernable for the government. So you have corruption, you have poverty, and you have politics. Three of them coming together, and that's why we have this problem as it is.
Mr. Bola Wole, now talking about the government, there's been insinuations as to our security forces and even some in government compromise and fueling the insecurity in Nigeria. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, it is. We have seen cases. We have seen cases of people in government. We have seen cases of the security forces themselves. We have seen cases of people giving their arms to all these kidnappers. We have seen people giving them vital information. We have seen people also protecting them, preventing them from being arrested, from being prosecuted. So we have seen cases of people doing this for political reasons. Those who do not want the government to succeed, those who want to give the government a bad name, who are in government, who are in high places, who are politicians. We have seen them encouraging kidnappers. We have seen them encouraging breakdown of law and order. So we have seen a lot of people, a lot of insider abuse as far as the fight against kidnapping is concerned. It's the same thing with the fight against corruption. You always find insider abuse. You always find people inside, people who are in the government also fighting the government and staying inside, piecing inside, staying inside and releasing
vital information, staying inside and serving as a cog in the wheel of progress. They are not allowing the right things to be done so that this scourge can be fought. So we have always had that, and it's also there now.
But what challenges are we looking at when it comes to tackling insecurity? Is it lack of manpower, technology, equipment, or just sheer reluctance by the government?
Everything, all put together, everything, they play a part. You have the problem of a lack of manpower. You have the problem of lack of requisite equipment. You have the lack of, lack of willingness to do the right thing. You also have the issue of duplicity on the part of those who are assigned this job, and complicity on the part of government. Somebody said that insecurity has become a very big business. Everybody is profiting from it. The government, the governors, the local government chairmen, they are profiting from it because they use this excuse now to increase their security vote. And they take this humongous amount, and we don't see what they are doing with the security vote. We have seen the budget of security, the budget of the armed forces, of the military. We have seen it balloon, but we cannot see the results. Some people are voting money for these things. Some people are collecting money. And we have seen cases of incidental cases of corruption against people who are supposed to be fighting this insurgency. We saw it during the regime of former President Goodluck Jonathan, how money that was meant to buy arms ended up in some other things, financing election and things like that, what they call the arms bazaar. And we have seen a situation where the security people lack the resources. We have seen generals come out to say that we are fighting with bare hands. We have seen many of them run away from the battlefronts, and they have been charged with treason. Some of them were even sentenced and things like that. And we have seen cases where they said that obsolete equipments were provided for them. We have seen cases where they have said that their allowances were not paid and things like that. So we have even seen cases of sabotage. We can even say that there are cases of sabotage, that this money is voted, this money is not used for the purpose, and the insecurity is festering. As insecurity is festering, as it's expanding, they are asking for more budget, more money, and they are getting more money. The problem is not getting solved, and some people are laughing to their banks with this money while the country is suffering. So it's a combination of complicity, duplicity, corruption, lack of manpower, lack of equipment. We are also being told now that they don't even have tracking equipment. We have the scandal of the police asking individuals whose relations have been kidnapped to go to private security companies to go and track. Can you imagine that?
Permit me, Mr. Bolawole, to quickly ask you, what's your view of not paying ransom to kidnappers, particularly for someone whose loved one is in captivity?
My sister, it is very difficult. We can say technically that when you pay ransoms, you encourage kidnapping to continue. Yes, but if your loved one is in captivity, and you know that the government is hamstrung for one reason or the other, for the reasons that we have stated, that the government is not going to be able to do something, are you simply going to close your eyes and say that your child should just be killed by the kidnappers? Are you going to close your eyes and say that you are sacrificing your husband, you are sacrificing your wife, you are sacrificing your father or your mother, and you just fold your arm and say that because if I pay ransom, I'm encouraging them? No, it is easier said than done. For those who are not affected, they can say, oh, when you pay ransom, you are encouraging them. Yes, but what is the alternative? The only way we can ask people not to pay ransom is when the people know that the government is up to the task. When the government knows that these criminals will be brought to book, that even if your loved one is killed, these people will still be brought to trial, that the long arms of the law will catch up with them. But we find a situation where that is not so. We have not seen those that have been arrested. We have not seen those that have been brought to trial. We have not seen those that have been brought to book. So in that situation, everybody is on his own. God is for us all. That is what we have now. When the security forces are telling you, go to private security companies to go and pay and track. Which one is better? To go to private security companies to pay to track, or to pay to the kidnappers and get your person freed? So it's a choice.
On the final note, how can we curb or eradicate kidnapping in Nigeria?
we can curb and eradicate kidnapping in Nigeria when the government decides that it wants to do so. There was a statement that the late General Sani Abacha that he made. He said, where an insurrection, where it lasts for more than 24 hours in the country, that a government official is involved. In other words, when you have a problem, and that problem is festering, and you have a government, a sitting government, and that problem is festering, and the government is not doing anything, it's not about to do anything about it, you must know that there are insiders that are not allowing that problem to be solved. So until the government is ready to deal with the insiders, we have a situation in this country where people who were financing insurgency were named publicly, where they were tried in another country. But here in Nigeria, they were let off the hook. Nothing was done. We have had situation of cases that people have been fingered, they have been arrested, their names have been mentioned, people know them, and yet they go ahead and give them chieftaincy titles.
I'm afraid this is where we have to end it. Thank you so much for your insight and company on the news. Bola Wole, a public affairs analyst. Thank you once again.
It's my pleasure to be here.
To Nigeria's southwest, the chairman of the Lagos State chapter of the People's Democratic Party, Philip Aivoji, who was abducted by some yet-to-be-identified gunmen along the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, has regained his freedom. Aivoji was released 4 days after he was abducted on Thursday. Aivoji and some other party chieftains were abducted at Ogere area of Lagos-Ibadan Expressway on Thursday while returning from the party stakeholders zonal caucus meeting convened by Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde and held in Ibadan, the state capital. His release was disclosed by the State Publicity Secretary Hakeem Amode in a short statement issued around 1:15 a.m. on Monday. The Lagos State government in Nigeria's southwest has continued demolishing illegal shops and buildings surrounding the Mandelas building, gutted by fire on 21st January 2024. The State Commissioner for Fiscal Planning and Urban Development, Oluyinka Olumide, says these ensure easy access for vehicles and pedestrians in the market. News Central's correspondent Niyo Moni has more.
The traders were permitted to remove their goods before demolition began.
There are airliners offices there, law offices or law firms are there, shipping and logistics companies are there, club is also there, hotel is also there, and shops or stores, warehouses are also there.
They tried as much as possible to see if they could quench the fire, but then getting access into this place, of course, a marketplace, as you can see, was a problem for them. And so that's why I believe this brought about this demolition of the attachment shop by the plazas.
Then, the demolition exercise, which is an attempt to restore order to the environment following repeated notices and warnings. Authorities say emergency vehicles are often hindered in Lagos Island market due to the lack of adequate vehicular access to distressed buildings. This was the case for the 15-story Mandelas Mall that was gutted by fire on January 21, located on Broad Street, where emergency trucks had difficulty gaining access. In a briefing with journalists, the Commissioner for Fiscal Planning and Urban Development stated that this exercise, which is continuous, is part of the state's urban renewal agenda.
The corridor is going to be totally cleaned up, and not only, let me use the opportunity to tell Lagosians, this is not going to be peculiarly to Lagos Island. It's the whole state now. We have to clear off all those shanties. But again, people should remove that mentality of staying on the street. You can be in the shop and still make your market.
Also, unauthorized construction without permits will not be tolerated, as the Lagos State government says it is set to enforce compliance with all applicable laws.
We are going to ensure that that is not repeated, because we are not going to allow those chances to be there. However, there are other agencies that are looking into development of markets for them. It's just that people don't want to do the right things.
Huge fire gutted the 15-story building on January 21, resulting in the loss of billions of naira in property and goods. In Lagos for News Central, Ni Omani.
As climate disaster continues to ravage societies, leaving its effect very glaring, frontliners have been urged to bring on board every necessary machinery to mitigate its effects even before they occur. Now, this was a thrust of a 3-day engagement by Center for Gospel Health and Development in conjunction with the National Emergency Management Agency in Jos, Plateau State, Lagos. Plateau State capital, Nigeria's North Central. News Center's Chizoba Nyongwe tells us more about this.
A stitch in time saves 9, they say, and that is why these community members converged on Jos to deliberate on measures that will mitigate adverse effects of climate change, which has become a cankerworm in various societies. According to research, drought and reduced rainfall, combined with rising air temperatures, inhibit the country's hydropower systems and hinder agricultural production and fishing, reducing food security and negatively impacting health and nutrition. This is why this event has become pertinent for stakeholders if the societies will be saved from adverse effects of climate change in rural areas.
During the rains, we have flooding and all that. So we just hope that after these 3 days of meeting with our community members, they'll be more prepared. They'll go back and step down whatever they've picked from this meeting to improve themselves and to build their communities.
These community people are the grassroots. They are the one are the first responders when this disaster occurs. So we're going about now trying to equip them with the knowledge of disaster management so that when it happens, the impact will be minimized.
This training is, to further empower frontline, workers on how to respond at that level before intervention will come from, the government or other non-governmental organizations.
With resources put in place, it would be an effort in futility if the message, as imperative as it is, fails to reach the rural people.
While erosion, it could be windstorm, it could be any other disaster, because there are disasters that are caused by man and those that are natural. So we should all be prepared and we'll step it down to the people.
Coming to trainings like this will help us gather more information on how to be proactive towards these disasters, that is as a result of climate change that we're witnessing.
To step down to our communities so that we'll take a response to it in preparedness to awaiting if such things occur.
In cases of emergency, it is expected that these frontliners will aid respondents in containing the situation in terms of first aid before help comes. Asia is currently facing alarming challenges due to climate change and variability, as illustrated by various climatic models predicting the global mean temperature will increase by 1.5 degrees Celsius between the year 2030 and the year 2050 if it continues to increase at the current rate. In Jos for News Central, I am Chizoba Anyonwe.
As one of the most populous countries in Africa, Nigeria's consumption capacity holds great potential for the recycling industry. A Nigerian company is giving old tires a second life, turning waste into bricks, floor tiles, and even flip-flops. The report.
Into a report by the Tire Industry Project, 1 billion end-of-life tires are generated globally every year, and an estimated 4 billion are currently in landfills and stockpiles worldwide. However, in Nigeria, one company is helping to reduce waste through recycling. Free Recycle is transforming old tires into paving bricks, floor tiles, flip-flops, and other goods, and since its launch in 2018, the company have recycled over 400,000 tires into new products.
We've been doing our best to educate the general public on the need to embrace recycling. You know, there's wealth in waste. Most people don't know that, but I'm happy that quite a number of people have started identifying opportunities in recycling.
If the depends on the trust of the company, if the product is okay, there's no problem about that.
For bungalows, I don't think there is much risk in it. For bungalows, basically. You can play around with bungalows. But if you are raising the load beyond bungalow level, it may not be advisable.
We need to welcome new innovation. So I will consider it, but with a proof. Probably I've had one or two people that have used that bricks from that same company that is introducing it from a tire, production.
Then mixed with an adhesive that lets workers shape the waste into all manner of products, which is believed to have prevented more than 8,100 tons of CO2 emissions since it began.
We are not only reducing the amount of tires that are being burnt in dump sites and landfills, and we all know that when you burn these tires, toxic fumes are released into the environment, which can then result in chronic health issues. We're also clearing out drainages. With tires and other solid waste in drainage, we usually see what happens. Flooding during the raining season, and then breathing ground for mosquitoes, which then causes malaria.
The existence of diverse opportunities along the value chain indicates an untapped gold mine that not only contributes to economic growth, but also social prosperity and environmental protection. If correctly managed, efficient waste recycling can result in job creation, renewable energy generation, air and water quality improvement, among other things. In Lagos, for News Central, Bettina Nwili.
Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces says it has shot down an Iranian-made drone allegedly belonging to the Sudanese army as fighting rages between the two forces in the capital Khartoum and other areas. The group said it had successfully intercepted and downed an unmanned aerial vehicle operated by the Sudanese Armed Forces, SAF, and its extremist backers from the former regime. The army is yet to comment on the incident. Local media outlets have reported increased drone strike by the army against RSF positions in Khartoum and the adjacent cities of Omdurman and Bari. The army has stepped up airstrikes against the RSF in recent weeks as fighting continues in the country for the 9th month. The United Nations Security Council is due to meet to discuss tensions between Somalia and Ethiopia over a controversial port deal with the self-declared Republic of Somaliland. The Somali State TV report that the Monday meeting will address concerning event in the Horn of Africa. The row was triggered by the Ethiopia signing of a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, with the Somaliland earlier this month. The deal gives landlocked Ethiopia access to a seaport for military and commercial purposes. Somalia, which considered Somaliland part of its territory, rejected the deal and accused Ethiopia of violating its sovereignty. Authorities in South Sudan's central equatorial state have banned the sale of a popular beer after several people died after consuming the local gin. The royal gin, popularly known as Mekue gin, is said to be addictive, mostly to young people. Its consumption reportedly increased during Christmas and New Year celebrations, leading to deaths of an unspecified number of people. The Anglican Church in the capital, Juba, has urged the governor to make sure the ban is enforced. The gin was nicknamed after Information Minister Michael Makue in 2019, who is said to be the most talkative minister in South Sudan. And former President of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, has been suspended from the African National Congress by the highest decision-making body of the party, the National Executive Committee, a political party that he was once its leader. The suspension of the former president by the governing party follows an announcement that was made by Zuma in December that he will not be campaigning or voting for the ANC as the country will be heading to the polls to the general election soon. According to the ANC, Zuma not voting or campaigning for the party while a member is a breach of the party's constitution. It is alleged that Zuma will be given 48 hours to respond to allegations leveled against him. And firefighters in South Africa are battling to put out wildfires in the wine-producing region of Cape Winelands including one fire that broke out a week ago. Local reports say the wildfires have raged uncontrollably for a week and spread by strong winds. 40 structures in informal settlements have been destroyed in the fire, and an estimated 22,600 acres razed down. Firefighters are also fighting to protect the Landsberg Nature Reserve, which holds the critically endangered rhinoceros vegetation. The Western Cape province frequently experiences wildfires during the dry season, which runs from October to April. A drone attack on a base in Jordan has killed 3 American troops, with President Joe Biden blaming Iran-backed militants for the first U.S. military death in the region since the Israel-Hamas conflict began. Iran said it had nothing to do with the attack and denied U.S. and British accusations that it supported militant groups responsible for the strike on the remote frontier base in Jordan's northeast, near the borders with Iraq and Syria. He pledged to hold all those responsible to account at a time and in a manner of its choosing. Biden later held a moment of silence at a South Carolina church banquet hall for the U.S. troops killed in the attack, vowing to respond.
I want to point out that we had a tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
And I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen soldiers. And we shall respond.
And joining us for more insight is our international correspondent, Afiya Hagan. Good afternoon from here, Afiya. Just tell us, details are sketchy. What do you know about this attack?
Well, you're absolutely right saying that details are sketchy at the moment. What we do know is the attack was on a US airbase in northeastern Jordan near the Syrian border in an area known as Tower 22. It's believed that the drone struck living quarters at the base. 3 US troops were killed, as we know, but 34 others are being evaluated for possible traumatic brain injuries. The US is blaming Iran or Iran-backed military groups for these attacks. Now, this is the first deaths by an airstrike, first deaths of US soldiers by an airstrike since that attack on October 7th by Hamas in Israel. But 2 Navy SEALs did go missing in an operation that was made to seize Iranian-bound missiles. That took place, the incident took place on 11th of January. So yes, these are the first deaths by US airstrikes, or by airstrikes, excuse me, against US targets since the October 7th attack.
Yes, Afiya, but what has been Iran's response to these attacks?
Well, Iran are saying that any accusations that they are in any way involved are absolutely baseless. They are saying it's nothing to do with them. Look elsewhere. The Iranian foreign minister, spokesperson for the Iranian foreign minister, Nazir Kanani, said that it's nothing to do with them, that reports that it was to do with them is baseless, that they are not involved in the decision-making of resistance groups and how those groups chose to defend Palestinians or their own countries. And that's referring to networks and proxies, allied groups in the region that they call the axis of resistance. Now, President Joe Biden has insisted that the attack was carried out by radical Iran-backed militant groups. But again, Iran saying, look, it's absolutely nothing to do with us. Now, Iran and the US will want to avoid a wider conflict, absolutely, in this region that is already descended into violence. There will be a great deal of pressure on both administrations to avoid that where possible. And obviously, the language that is used in this situation is very, very important. We don't want to stoke tensions any further on either side.
How about the US? What has been their response so far to these attacks?
Oh, yes, President Joe Biden there leading that moment of silence. He's described this attack as despicable and wholly unjust, saying that the US will hold those people responsible to account at a time and manner of our choosing. Other people in the US Senate saying they're deeply saddened, that their hearts go out to the families. Now, presidential hopeful former President Donald Trump has said that the attack would never have happened if he were president. It's also worth remembering that at the time when he was president, tensions between the US and Iran were at an all-time high, and US forces in Syria were attacked several times between 2016 and 2020 during his time in power, killing 4 troops. So we're not really sure how accurate that would be. If he was in charge, that attack would not have happened. But general sadness, upset, and revulsion all round in the US at this attack on their troops.
Well, how do you think this will escalate tensions in the region?
It was always inevitable that troops from one of the interested parties, whether that be the US, whether that be the UK, would be killed in this conflict since the start of rising tensions and obviously the war that's taking place in Gaza at the moment. US targets have been attacked more than 150 times, but never resulting in deaths like it has at the moment. And of course, this is an area where tensions are absolutely heightened. You've got attacks from Iraq and Syria. Obviously, you've got the Houthi rebels being attacked by the US and the UK and Yemen. So all round in the Middle East at the moment, you have violence breaking out from Palestine, from Gaza, into Iran, and all across the region. This will do nothing to stoke to level those tensions. It only stokes them even more. And like I said, it's being very careful about the rhetoric that is coming out of the US and ultimately will come from their allies in the UK and across Europe. It's about tempering those factions, making sure that any Iran-backed groups know that if you do attack any of these targets, retaliation will come, but also trying to temper things so you don't have a situation where you have attacks on Iran, because then you run the risk of nuclear weapons and nobody wants to go down that road.
All right, thank you so much for your time. Afia Hagan, our international correspondent. Thank you once again. Now moving on to another story. King Charles has extended his stay in hospital after undergoing a correction procedure on his prostate last week. The king had the operation done at the London Clinic in Marylebone, the same hospital, where the Princess of Wales is recovering from her abdominal surgery and was expected to spend 2 nights there, but he will now be staying a 3rd night under the watchful eye of doctors. Queen Camilla visited Charles several times over the weekend, including 3 visits on Sunday. King Charles was found to have a harmless condition on January 17 while at Aberdeenshire after he went to the doctor because he wasn't feeling well. And for business news, the business desk has more details.
On business, the Nigeria Railway Corporation made around 1.895 billion naira in income from passenger and freight shipments in the 3rd quarter of 2023. In July, August, and September of 2023, the latest NBS rail transport data showed an increase of 103.1% from 933 million naira recorded in the same quarter of 2022. Based on the report, the NRC generated 1.49 billion naira from passengers during the period and recorded 286.78 million naira from cargo and goods. There were additional receipts totaling 119.22 million naira, reflecting a 1.05% increase in quarter 3 of 2023 compared to the 117.98 million naira collected in quarter 3 of 2022. When compared on a quarter-on-quarter basis, revenues from rail transport increased by 57.13% from 1.206 billion naira generated in the second quarter of 2023 to 1.89 billion naira for the third quarter. The Nigerian Exchange Limited has paused trading on the shares of GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC for eventual delisting from the exchange. This was contained in the weekly report of the exchange on its website. The suspension followed the approval of the scheme of arrangement GlaxoSmithKline Consumer Nigeria PLC had between the companies and holders of its fully paid ordinary shares by the Securities and Exchange Commission and sanctioning of the scheme of arrangement by the Federal High Court. According to the report, the suspension was to enable the registrars to update the register of members for payment of the scheme, consideration, and eventual delisting of the company from the NGX. The Innovation, Development and Effectiveness in the Acquisition of Skills project in Nigeria is set to undergo a restructuring according to proposals reviewed by the World Bank. The initiative, which began with $200 million in funding, has had difficulty achieving its goals and will see major modifications to increase in its efficacy. This is according to the Implementation Status and Results Report for the project. The project was approved on February 18, 2020 to enhance the capacity of the Nigerian skills development system to produce relevant skills for the formal and informal sectors. Findings reveal that out of the $200 million, only about $34.88 million has been released by the World Bank. Due to the poor performance of the project, the World Bank has not released more funds, which are tied to meeting certain project criteria. The Kenyan government is seeking 70 billion Kenyan shillings in an infrastructure bond or IFB sale that will test the resolve of the Central Bank of Kenya to keep the cost of domestic borrowing in check. The 8.5-year infrastructure bond, which is the second of its type being sold in the current fiscal year, has been floated in a period of heavy maturities of government debt, underperforming revenue collection, and external borrowing, raising the pressure on CBK to take up expensive bids in bond sales. The bond will be on sale until February 14, having hit the markets on Wednesday. In February, domestic debt service obligations maturities plus coupon payments are estimated at 280.9 billion Kenyan shillings, nearly half of which lies on maturities of the 91-day Treasury bill. Finally, Uganda has once again chosen to work with a United Arab Emirates company as the primary developer and financier of its 60,000 barrels per day oil refinery. This decision was made despite the fact that financier lacks technical expertise or experience in developing downstream refining facilities for gas and oil. Energy Minister Ruth Nakambirwa announced that the government had picked Alpha MBM Investments LLC from the UAE, with which Kampala signed a Memorandum of Understanding last December outlining cooperation and negotiation terms for the refinery. Already set back several years, Kampala is keen on the quick takeover of the project that has since 2015 seen three investors, namely Russia's RT Resources, South Korea's SK Engineering, and the Albertine Graben Energy Consortium. All were invited for the job, but none went beyond the initial talks. And that's all on business news. Many thanks for watching. I am Likon Onobanjo.
And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. ECOWAS ready for negotiated solution as Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger exit bloc. Sudan's paramilitary support forces down Iranian-made drone. South Africa ANC suspends former President Jacob Zuma from party. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adeduba.